Hi, and welcome to A Word with Kellie Scott Reed. We're here with Alais
Hello.
Henri. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm hiding in my red room ready to talk.
Nice. Me too. I'm in the basement, so we're
I love that.
me too.
We've got that vibe going.
We do. Alais, tell us where you're coming to us from.
I'm in Denver, Colorado. Yeah, the sort of the extra medium city of the United States. Everything here is extra medium.
I love that. I love that. That's very funny. Now we're having you on today because you had reached out. You have a book out. Can you tell us a little bit about your book, your novel?
Yes, I've published a novel through Agape Editions. Agape is a small press centered in New York, in upstate New York. And so this novel, it took me about maybe 5 years to write. And it's called The Voluptuaires. And the title itself comes from a Lewis Carroll quote when Lewis Carroll was writing a letter where he was weighing in on the plight of children and women in Victorian England, especially the children and women who were involved in theater. And there was this movement that children and women should be banned from the theater because it wasn't safe for them. And Lewis Carroll, um, his idea was that children and women were essential to the theater and essential to the arts. And he threw this comment out that, like, if there are voluptuaires out there hunting these children and women, we should protect them or we should guard them, that sort of thing. He didn't want drama to be just dudes, and he wanted children and women. But that whole voluptuaires line, the voluptuaires was a Victorian phrase often used to describe men who were excessively decadent or depraved and often rich, bougie, that sort of thing. So that that stuck in my head. It became the title because the content matter itself kind of explores, well, kind of. I say kind of for everything. Like, you'll be like, is the world outside? Kind of. Is kind of.
Yeah.
The novel itself explores the themes of privilege and wealth, boredom, trauma, just about anything horrible that can happen, but you put buttercream frosting on top of it. Some of it is based on personal experience, that it gets out of hand quickly. Let's see, how do I describe this novel? The Voluptuaires through Agape Editions. Um, it's a simple novel. Like, it could be a one room play. If it was on the stage, most of the novel takes place in one apartment. And the premise of the novel is two wealthy, privileged young men, and this takes place in Denver. Two privileged young men post COVID approach a young woman and, as a prank, ask her, she's a prostitute. And the woman takes them up on the offer. Like, it's like, we've got three bored people. Like, literally, she's kind of like, well, I got nothing better to do with my day. Let's see where this goes. And the bare bones of the narrative basically are, where will this go? What if you said yes to everything? And it can not end up good. So, like, you have three characters who decide to say yes for everything. There's boredom, there's trauma, there's PTSD, there's all sorts of things going on in their background. But then it becomes a war between the genders. And this is where I took a lot of, there's parts of it that are personal experience with me because I had a bad habit in my past of saying yes to things. And some things, I'm alive, everything's good, life is good, awesome. I have kind of a morbid sensibility. So when you say, in a few years, we're going to laugh about this, some of those things you shouldn't be laughing about, but I kind of am. But so there's a lot of unpacking, emotional unpacking of my own that I stack into it. It's not a completely non-fictional novel, though. That's like, no, 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 no.
Mhm.
There's elements, the what ifs. There's a lot of what ifs that happen in there. Um,
So you're
but
basically drawing on personal experience and then exploring, maybe delving in a little bit more and taking
yeah,
the reader to a
yeah,
more philosophical place.
there are some like interesting parts, especially with some dialogue and some incidents that are actually just kind of funny. Like there's a little bit of dark humor where as a writer, you might go, oh, I'm saving that. I'll use that later. That was funny. You overhear something or someone else tells you something. I'm a bit of a crow in that matter, like where you collect funny bits of your life to put in there. But the some of that is unpacking my own personal trauma. There's also this other element of what do we all love, especially as women, true crime. And
Yes,
oh, we
100%.
know those podcasts, so we know those documentaries, we know true crime. And there's quite a few that was something I was into even when I was 10 years old. They had to ban the news. I was banned from reading newspapers when I was like 10 or 11 because I went straight to where all the murder was, and I went straight to where all the horrible stuff was, and then I couldn't stop talking about it. And so pretty soon those newspapers got tossed. And it affected, it wasn't just entertainment for me, even though it is a level of entertainment for all of us. Sometimes it's a how-to manual on how to survive and what not to do. Sometimes we are rubbernecking and we're like, oh my God, what happened? Other
Mhm.
times we find a fascination. Other times we have empathy, or all at the same time. And I experienced I used to keep a scrapbook of horrible things that happened in Denver and just read the narrative from when a crime happened to all the way when the conviction happens or the non-conviction. And I always looked at those and I'm like, there's a story, and it's not just the headlines. There's people who made bad decisions, people who were in the wrong place at the wrong time. Something that started because of something quiet and stupid. So there is an element of, I kind of imagined, what if this actually did happen and it's going to appear in the podcast or on Netflix
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
2 years.
Mhm.
And so it's kind of commentary on like the real story that leads to the tragedies we all read about. And since the characters in question are kind of in a bougie, high profile, wealthy environment, I also took some of the old school Hollywood elements of, if you go down the rabbit hole of reading about the Hodel family, in when the Black Dahlia case happened in Los Angeles, George Hodel was a patriarch of a very terrifying, kind of messed up family that involved a cult of Hollywood elites. That nothing ever got solved there, but we know terrible things happened to people who had no power by all the people who did have power.
Mm.
And some of that was my inspiration. Crazy rich families who have way too much money and their kids have way too much time. And we know that story. It plays over and over.
Yeah, right.
So
Oh yeah.
I've got
So
the
that's
true
a
crime element, I've got the trauma
yeah.
element, I've got personal element, and I've also got the element of that old school Hollywood glamour sort of thing.
I love that. So a bit of noir thrown in for good measure.
Mhm.
Very
Yeah,
cool. Now,
yeah.
when you write, for example, you wrote something that's very complex, it sounds like, and complex in a good way, that gives something to someone, whoever's reading it's going to find something in it. When you're writing, do you have a plan that you use, like a written plan, an outline? Because sometimes when we get all these elements in a story, I know I have a real hard time keeping track. How do you organize when you make such a complex creation?
Um, I fantasize about being super organized. Like I see like the tutorials, I see the people who have index cards and file folders and things like that. And I would love to have that level of organization. A lot of it is probably stubbornness. There's a bit of messiness. Like I sit down and the thing I need to know is the ending. Otherwise, I'll never finish something. So when I have the seed of an idea, I ask myself, where is this going? What is the ending? And it goes back to that true crime element. I pretend like, what if I was picking up a newspaper and I heard about something that happened like last week? Or so there's their seed, the seed of the idea that, oh my God, did you hear what happened? So I take that seed. And then I imagine it's 20 years from now and you're checking out a book at the library about something bad that happened or historical. So I treat it like a historical event. So I pretend that it's happened, that it's real. And I convince myself that it's real. And so when I get there, then I have to do a forensic thing on it. Like I've got my ending, I've got my seed. What did these characters want? Why did it have to happen like this? And this is for my I have manuscripts, I have piles of manuscripts. This is my first like contracted published with an indie press novel, So I do have a process though. And that process is figure out the end, know your seed, figure out the end, and then ask what was going on in their minds. And I don't, even if I have horrible characters, I try not to dislike them. Like we all have that friend that like maybe did something bad and you're like, why did you do that? But deep down inside, you can't hate your friend or your family member, but you're angry at them. They did this thing, but you have to look at them with some empathy because of a personal connection. And so I try to look at my characters like that, like I'm an exact
like your
mother.
kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I'm thinking that's how I feel my kids. I want to strangle them sometimes, and then I'm super happy.
Yeah, the hands,
and love them at the same moment. Yeah,
they're like, "Look, I stole this cat. Can I keep it?" And you're like, "What?" That's the thing. So I try to look at them with that sort of empathy. It's kind of unfortunate for this novel, my I guess debut, because the characters end up doing some pretty bad things. They're not good people. But the thing about not good people, you can be a not good person, but also be kind of likable. And so it's kind of a study into narcissism and sociopathy. And the thing is, we get burned by sociopaths because they're nice, they're charismatic. It's really not your fault if a narcissist or a sociopath burns you, because there is no red flags. The red flags is they were nice. That was the Look, I actually do have a personal fear of very nice people, because
but you're really nice.
I am, but like, watch out, man, watch out.
No, honestly, I can say, I mean, a lot of folks are like, oh, because I'm a really nice person. I really am in general. I like people. Yeah. I like them. No matter who they are, I tend to find something I can like. But there is a tendency for people who are like me to also get extremely angry really fast. It's like I go from this way to this way. Like I'm super nice, but then don't cross. I guess it's like because I'm giving myself that I feel very, I don't know, defensive. I just thought it was interesting when you were talking about that, because that's very interesting.
It's the and the niceness factor I'm describing is someone who just seems perfect. Like the sociopath or the narcissist, often they put the world on a platter for you, and it almost feels like it's for free. And who wouldn't say no to very, very awesome people doing awesome things for you all of a sudden? And then it becomes a shock when the rug gets pulled out from under you. Now, these characters, they don't start off as nice. They start off, the plot events, which is not a spoiler because it's basically chapter 1, it kicks off with them degrading a girl to her face, basically to degrade her. And they just didn't expect she'd take them up on it, So they are already bad people, but the real process in the novel was making them human beings. And just because you're a human being doesn't make you automatically a good person, doesn't make you special. But there's something we do see in humans that we're like, oh, okay, you're like this because of that. It doesn't excuse some of the things that happen. But I didn't want to create the mustache twirling,
the bad guy. The bad, obviously bad.
Yeah, I didn't want to do that straightforward bad versus good thing, because I think one of the things we get attracted to in the genre of true crime and podcasts and these extensive digs into these things that happen is that we often end up finding out, well, the serial killer was like dot 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 dot, and you end up feeling bad for the 10-year-old boy he once was. But that doesn't excuse what he did. But we do find a fascination with learning what makes things tick. How did this get here? How did this happen? Sometimes it's a cautionary tale. Like sometimes parents are like, well, if I was only more involved, if I was only more dot dot dot. And there's so many things that go into play that to create a tragedy. And it's like, can we prevent them? Maybe not. Maybe it's fate, maybe it's not, we don't know. But that's the question that drives us nuts all the time. When we're standing on the sidelines and something happens to either us or to the people we care about, we begin to analyze the choices that lead up to there. Sometimes victim blaming happens. Sometimes self-blaming happens. Sometimes just pure anger happens. But one thing we always do is just analyze every step along the way that got us there. So I take the events in this book where I picked my ending. I knew what was going to happen at my end, and I journeyed them along the way. And I didn't expect to put a lot of myself in it initially. The entire seed of the novel actually started maybe like 5 years ago. Lisa Cantarell, who runs Clash Books, she had an anthology, a call for entries for an anthology called Tragedy Queens. And she wanted fiction short stories based on the songs of Lana Del Rey. And I'm pretty obsessed with
very
Lana.
Cool.
Like there's the Taylor group, I'm the Lana group, which means I'm laying around sorry for myself all the time. And I love it. It's like, we're like, oh, the tragedy happened, but it's beautiful. And so I was like, this is great. So my seed and my ending started with the idea that I was going to write a 5,000 word short story. And then 50,000 words later, I was like, okay, this is not going to work for the anthology. Wow. Years passed and I was still writing it. And so the Kickstarter, the jumpstart for this was the songs of Lana Del Rey's album Ultraviolence. And Holly, like if you go through her old libretto of music, there is a lot of, you can tell she's unpacking a lot of stuff she's not facing in terms of horror, trauma, submissiveness, intense submissiveness. It's hard to listen to. It can be really tough. So I had that as my mood, as the vibe. And I was leaning into that. But along the way, as the years passed and I was writing, the manuscript became more honest when I began to put some of the horrible stuff to me in there. And that was a reason why I chose, this is my pen name, Alais Henri. And I'm just putting a very, very thin veil to separate me from what I put out there. But on the bright side, once that novel was finished and out of my body, I feel great.
Good. Where can we get your book? Where can you find it?
Right now you can get it off the agapeeditions.com website on Agape Editions. It's AGAPE-editions.com. And right now you can purchase it there. It will be on the shelves at the Tattered Cover Bookstore in Denver, Colorado. Which I'm excited. I was like, that's awesome. I grew up going to that store. I submitted an application and they accepted it for their local author program. So if you live in Denver, you can also stop by the Tattered Cover sometime around the end of August to pick up a copy. I'm emailing bookstores right now. You can also hit me up on Twitter if you do that at author Alais on Twitter. If you hit me up personally, I can send you an autographed copy. If people like that, right? We still like autographs, right?
They like it. Absolutely. A little signed message from you would be awesome.
Right. Yeah. I might even throw some artwork in there because, yay, someone noticed me, that sort of thing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you coming on with us today. It was really awesome to just get to know the book. It sounds amazing. I'm super excited to read it myself. And maybe we'll do a Rough and Yell book club about it at some point. I would really love that. This is right up my alley. It's right up my alley. So thank you.
It comes with 8 gazillion trigger warnings, as suggested by the public. Just to let people know,
Absolutely.
not for the faint of heart.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Alice.
Thank
Next
you.
time.